Hey everybody, it's Scott Mitchell with It's My Game Speaker Highlights. Today we're talking with Margie, head of women's tennis at IMG here in the United States. Margie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and your pathway that you took to get you to IMG and what you're doing these days.
Well, I was a college tennis player, and obviously, growing up, I was always very self-driven as a tennis player. And after my tennis career was over as a player, I wanted to become the best female coach that I could possibly become. I saw there weren't many female coaches, especially in the academy setting, about 17 years ago when I began at IMG. At that time, IMG Bollettieri. So I started 17 years ago, and my
Wow.
first really interaction was directly with Nick, and we had a program called distance learning. So I would come in at 5 in the morning and sit down and watch videos with Nick and other coaches and analyze them. So it really began with the great who started our academy many years ago, and this academy has transformed into, it keeps developing and always getting better and evolving. But that's really where it started for me, and my passion began with the academy about that long ago. So.
Wow, 17 years. So you've seen not only a lot of changes there at IMG. I mean, I think back in the day when you probably started, it was just tennis, and now it's multi-sport. So what are some of the changes you've seen in the tennis world? What have you seen with, in particular, coaching kids or coaching females that you've transitioned through in the 17 years of your career so far?
One of the biggest differences that I see with coaching, or even coaching at IMG Academy, is that we are more than just coaches on the court now. You know, there's more responsibilities that we have as coaches to understand all of these kids, whether they're young kids or they're teenagers or they're professionals. We have to understand them better as individuals, as people, which means that we are available to talk with them on the phone, outside the court. We are making development plans for them and making sure their tournament schedules. It's no longer just you're on the court with the player and then you're off the court with the player and the day is over. So I think being a tennis coach more is really nowadays is more about not only the tennis, but it's also personal development as well. And then as an academy, one of our greatest success over the years has been in making sure that we include all the different areas of the team, and that the communication is really good amongst, if you're a tennis coach and you have fitness coaches and you have nutritionists, or if you have a physio trainer, or even the school on the academic side, that as the tennis coach, that you're the link, that you know what's going on in each area for that kid, and that's really in their best interest. And that's a really important aspect of really developing a tennis player.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, this piece of communication, I think, is huge, and I think a lot of times coaches don't realize that's as important, if not sometimes more important, than what's actually happening on the court. You know, the communication that you have between the coach and the player. But tell us a little bit about how involved are the parents? How do you stay connected with the parents? And how important is that as the overall communication for you all? Because I know we talk about it a lot of times in the, you hear about the nightmare parent. And I always tell the coaches, well, usually the nightmare parent is just they lack information. So we've got to communicate more often to them. How much time do you spend communicating with the parents as well?
That's exactly right. I mean, the success as the coach for the child is making sure that you develop relationships with every part of their lives, and that includes the parents, because they're providing that opportunity for their child. And what you said, Scott, is exactly right. You have to educate the parents, and you don't avoid the parents or judge the parents. You coach the parents, in the sense that you make them feel included. You call them before anything becomes an issue. You almost have to, as you gain experience as a coach, that you are almost foreshadowing things that you need to do ahead of time, and being ahead of the parents. And always over communicating is better than under communicating. So I think the communication is huge, and also explaining that to the parent that this is not, we're not looking for a fast results. This is a long process, and there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. And you have a team around you that cares and has the experience, and just reassuring the parents and giving them confidence. I think with parents, there's a lot of unknowns for them. A lot of parents, it's their first time with their child, and they want to do everything they can the best for their kid. And just guiding the parents and saying those unknowns are actually the most exciting part of your child's journey. You don't know where they're going to get to. You don't know how they're going to do in their next tournament. And all of those unknowns, that's the best part. So to embrace that kind of, we don't know what's going to happen feel, because as coaches, we already can see what's going to happen a lot of times with players along the road, especially if you're very experienced. But as parents, that journey, embrace the unknowns, is important to understand for them.
Yeah, that's great advice for sure. You've had great success with coaching and coaching with all levels and all ages of players. What, if you had to give maybe 1 or 2, 3 tips to up and coming coaches that are working with female players, where are the areas of development that you would think that they should really kind of focus in on?
3 tips that I would say. I probably could give 20, but I'll give 3. One of the most important things, and I think, Mike Barrell with this whole program really cares about where the kids come from, where they're brought up, what's their family like. Understanding the background of the individual that you're working with is really important, because that way you don't judge why they're acting a certain way. You may understand why they may be acting a certain way. So understanding about their background is extremely important as a coach, and not treating each player the same, and understand that one personality or one coaching style may work better with one player, and one player may like to, you got to learn the tendencies of each player that you work with, and understand that. So I think the background, understanding to listen to your player. It's not always proving about how good of coaches we are and how much we know, but it's really how to listen to your player and bring out the best in your player. And that sometimes it may be you're tough on them, or it may be a little humor at times. Some players respond to different personalities, like I said. And lastly, timing when you coach. Do you coach, right after they make a mistake? Or do you coach maybe after they hit a great shot, and you give them a little constructive criticism after they make a great shot, when their ears are going to listen to you? So I think timing of when you say things or when you discuss a match is different with each player, but you have to have that finesse and feel of when the timing is good when you coach.
Yeah, those are great points, because I think a lot of coaches get in just to the arena of coaching the game and not understanding all these elements that you just mentioned, which is huge, right? That's going to either make or break that relationship that you have, because the kids want to first know that you care. And then once you care about them and you've built that trust, they're going to listen to a lot of the different things that you have. So that's great advice for sure. And as we go into, in every place around, this is an international conference, but maybe just here in the United States, where do you think that we are missing some key elements on getting more kids involved in the game of tennis? I know areas around the world are not seeing the struggles or the plateau that we've seen here in the States. So what are maybe some of the keys that you think coaches can focus in on to really get more kids involved in this game?
Just even think, this is a complex question, and I think if we had the answer, that would be, really beneficial to our sport. But I think there's a lot of different things, a lot of different aspects of that question. I would say, number one, children need role models. And, as a coach, or even, as a player, you want to create a storyline that kids can aspire. Here at the Academy, we have tons of Japanese kids, because Kei Nishikori is their role model. And, the agent has done a very great job of not only channeling Kei into just the tennis world, but in Japan, he's everywhere. And I think getting our tennis role models out there and their stories, Monica Puig winning the first Olympic gold medal, or Maria Sharapova in Russia for young girls. I think it starts with the stories that draw in young kids that they can buy into, and the coaches building the stories to them. That really creates a love for the game. And I think also not only pulling kids into the game, but also making sure they stay in the game. The coach's responsibility is to educate the parents that it's not about quantity. It's not about how much tennis you're playing and how you can be a champion by age 12. It's about a long-term process with these kids, and to have fun with it and to enjoy it early on. I think we always think that hard work has to be so serious,
Right.
and that if you're serious and you're not having fun, that means you're working hard. But we've got to create that environment that actually, at a young age, that these kids enjoy it. They enjoy competing. Competing is fun at a young age, and not feeling that pressure that by the time they're 13 that they want to quit the game. So keeping the kids involved in the game is really important. And then within the US, it's very important that all of the major influencers, whether it's the USTA or the private sectors or UTR, whatever channel is an influencer, that we're working together and we're creating a synergy for the sport. Just like this conference, we're coming together with so many different avenues. I think that synergy, it creates excitement for our sport, that we're working together. And when you work together, that's in the best interest of the children.
Agreed. Yeah, it's going to be a great conference. It's a global conference with speakers from around the world, which is really neat. Tell us, I know you're presenting, so tell us a little bit about your presentation. I believe Filling the Toolbox, Essential Technical Foundations. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was speaking with Mike, and one thing, my specialty is definitely working with female athletes, but in general, whether it's a male athlete, a female athlete, I think as coaches, we have to be able to work with everyone. And so this presentation, what we're presenting is that if you're a kid and you're coming to an academy, and what are the fundamentals that you should have coming to the academy that are already in place. So let's say you're 10, 11, 12, what are the fundamentals from, the ground strokes that we're looking for so that you will continue to develop? And ultimately, we're embracing the technical side in this presentation, but the reason we are ultimately is to make sure that the kids have the tools so when they compete, that they're there. And because when it comes down to it, even at a young age, the kids have to learn how to compete and problem solve and play matches against players that are worse than them, players that are better than them. And the technical side in tennis is very important, but we all know that each tennis player has their own game style and how they swing, but there are some fundamentals that as an academy here that we would like to make sure that the kids may have in place.
Yeah, that's going to be huge, and people have to tune into your presentation, because I think these are the key elements that if we get them, the technical aspects, correct at the beginning, it really helps them through their pathway. And sometimes you probably get them coming to the academy where there's a couple things that are just missing that should have been taken care of down the pathway, and it just makes it tougher to fix as they get older. So yeah, it's going to be exciting for that. Tell us one last question. Maybe what is the one thing that you hope that coaches or clubs that will register for this conference are going to take away from being a part of the 9 days, over 40 hours worth of content and international speakers as we met? What's that one thing that you hope that they take away?
Just an open-mindedness to, one of the most important things we spoke about earlier in our conversation was, as a coach, you have to listen, and you have to and being a good listener and embracing information. And no one is the perfect coach. You know, I'm always learning every day. And I think that open-mindedness to learning different perspectives, any kind of information that you can take away, because as coaches, we're always preaching to our kids to listen to what we have to say and be a good listener and have a growth mindset as a player. But I think as coaches, we have to do the exact same. And when we do the exact same as an industry, we're all getting better in it together.
Well said. Well said. We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. I know your time's valuable, Margie, so I appreciate you jumping on with us. And we look forward to seeing you August 14th to the 23rd for It's My Game Kids Tennis Conference.
Thank you so much.